Good morning. This is Chair French convening the regular business meeting of the Kansas Corporation Commission for Tuesday, June 30th, 2026, joined by my colleague Commissioner Keither. Commissioner Keene is absent today. On today's agenda, we have a consent agenda consisting of 36 items. We have one noticed order, and we have one other noticed item, which is a public hearing and potential adoption of permanent regulations. We will begin with our consent agenda. Commissioner Keither, you and I have had the opportunity to review those 36 items on the consent agenda. Let me ask at this time if you have any questions.
No questions, thanks.
And I have no questions as well, so I will move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. The consent agenda is approved. We will now move to our noticed items. Our first noticed item is in docket number 26 TRAM 0410 MIS. This is a proposed order designating guidance document and approving staff's use of the Transportation Division's Uniform Penalty Assessment Table. And our presenter for this item is Mr. Hassan Latif. Good morning, Hassan.
Good morning, Commissioners. This order arises out of the Transportation Division's annual review of its motor carrier penalty assessments. The Transportation Division Special Investigators conduct compliance reviews on motor carriers that are domiciled in Kansas, and at the completion of those compliance reviews, motor carriers are provided with a list of violations that range from minor to major, and major violations result in civil penalties issued by the Commission. These fines are aimed at improving the safety of motor carriers operating amongst the general public and enforcing motor carrier rules and regulations. Transportation staff annually reviews the civil fines issued to motor carriers through the Commission penalty orders and decides to add or remove violations or to adjust the severity of those penalties based on the feedback from our special investigators, trends in the industry, and the state of motor carrier safety in Kansas. In recommending appropriate fines, staff looks at the size of the business and the gravity of the violation. So after discussions with staff, 4 substantive changes have been made to the fiscal year 2027 penalty matrix. Those changes involve increasing penalties for carriers that fail to implement a drug testing program, fail to obtain required insurance, and fail to maintain records of inspection and maintenance. The changes also update the way motor carriers are penalized for using drivers that don't have a required commercial driver's license or do not have any license at all. Previously, they would receive one $500 penalty, regardless of the number of drivers found to be operating without a license. But this carriers would now receive a penalty for each driver they use that doesn't have the required license. This is noted in staff's R&R as well as in the penalty matrix itself, both of which are attached to the order. With that, staff believes the fiscal year 2027 penalty matrix is appropriate and that it reflects the current motor carrier industry context and the motor carrier safety regulations, and recommends approval of the order. And I'm happy to take questions, and I believe Mr. Hamey is also with us.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Latif, for the overview. Are there any questions on this item, beginning again with Commissioner Keither?
No questions, thanks.
And I have no questions as well. Thank you for the overview. So with that, I will move approval of the order.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the order as described in this docket. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. The order is approved. With that, we now move to our final noticed item on today's agenda. And as I mentioned, that is a public hearing on the adoption of regulations. So let me get my script, and we're going to call on Hassan here in a minute, but I will go ahead and call to order the public hearing on proposed amendments to our motor carrier safety regulations. Kansas law requires that the commission hold a public hearing before it may adopt regulations. Our staff will provide a brief review of the proposed regulations, and then the commission will provide an opportunity for the public to submit either oral or written comments on the proposed regulation. We will begin first with entries of appearance from council, and I guess I'll call on staff since that's the only party I see with us today.
Yes, I'm Assam Latif, appearing on behalf of staff and the public generally.
And Mr. Latif, do you have a recommendation on whether notice of this hearing is proper?
I do. Pursuant to the Kansas Rules and Regulations Filing Act, a minimum 60-day public comment period is required before an agency may adopt permanent regulations. And on April 23rd, commission staff had published in the Kansas Register notice of this public hearing, thereby exceeding the minimum 60-day requirement. Because publication of the notice in the Kansas Register constitutes notice to all parties affected by the regulations, the Rules and Regulations Filing Act does not require agencies to send notices to each party believed to be interested in the proposed regulation. Staff recommends that commission find that notice was proper and that it has jurisdiction to conduct this hearing in this time and place.
All right. Well, I do not see any members of the public or other parties here today, but for the record, I will ask if there are any objections to a finding that notice is proper. Hearing none, I will find that notice was proper and that the commission has jurisdiction to proceed with this public hearing at this time and place. And now we will turn to a presentation and summary of the proposed regulation changes, and we will turn back to Mr. Latif for that information.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen, so hopefully that goes as planned. Are you seeing the, okay.
It just changed to full screen, so I think
Okay,
you're good to go.
Awesome. Okay. Good morning again. The purpose of our hearing is twofold: to provide an overview of the proposed regulation and to receive public comments. That is the agenda we have set today, and we don't have any people who have signed up to comment today, but normally we would limit comments to comment at all participants, but that won't be a problem today. So the proposed amendments update regulations to more recent versions of the federal CFRs or reference updated documents. In order to obtain motor carrier safety assistance program funding, states are required to adopt certain federal motor carrier safety regulations within 3 years of them being promulgated. This allows for motor carriers to travel through different states and encounter similar rules and regulations in each state. And we began the process of updating this specific regulation in 2025. These periodic updates are required to ensure that we maintain federal grant funding for various motor carrier programs. The substantive changes made in this regulation include, basically, this regulation sets up definitions that are used in the Kansas Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. And those definitions include a definition for out of service, or OOS, which is the designation that is given to a motor carrier that commits a major violation requiring the vehicle or the driver to be stopped from operating until that violation is corrected. Annually, the out of service definitions adopt a specific document. It's called the North American Out of Service Criteria, and that informs what is considered to be an out of service violation. Updating this regulation quickly this year was a request of the Kansas Highway Patrol because there was a change to the North American Out of Service Criteria, and that was that it changed the rule regarding motor carrier inspectors being able to place a driver out of service if they cannot pass an English language proficiency test at roadside. That test involves testing to see that the driver can respond to commands from the instructor or from the inspector that would allow them to conduct the inspection. And our motor carrier inspectors and the Highway Patrol are trained in how to conduct that test. And from our conversations with the Highway Patrol, it is not a situation where if there's a close call that violation would be assigned. It's only in situations where there's just not an inability to communicate completely with the inspector. Prior to this new rule, drivers who failed the test would just receive a citation but would not be placed out of service, so they could continue driving. Now they would be placed out of service, and a new driver would have to come relieve them before they would be allowed to continue their operations. This regulation was already approved as a temporary regulation in April. But so this public hearing today is part of the process for approval of the permanent version of that regulation. Usually we would discuss time limits for public comments here, but since we have no registrants for this hearing, that is not necessary. So I would like to advise the commission that since no one signed up to make a comment on these regulations, and this is a closed meeting, and unless the commission has any comments, I believe we can end the public hearing here, but I'll turn it back over to the chair. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Latif, for the presentation. We are now going to turn to the public comment period, but as Mr. Latif noted, no one has registered to attend and make a public comment, but we do thank anybody that may be viewing today's public hearing online on our YouTube channel. This hearing is an important step in our process of amending our regulations. So even though we do not have any registrants, it does not look like any stakeholders or members of the public have joined the Zoom. I will just pause here to see if there is anybody showing up to make a public comment. A very brief pause because I don't see anybody. So I believe we do not have any public comments. And so this will conclude the public hearing for this regulation. Thank you, Mr. Latif. And we will now move to, now that we've had the public hearing, we will now move to adoption of the regulations by a roll call vote. And Mr. Latif, can you please give us some quick background on this process?
Yes. After the public hearing, the next step in the regulation process involves the commissioners approving the adoption of this regulation by a roll call vote. And by voting to adopt this regulation, the commission would allow staff to send the regulation to the Secretary of State's office for publication. You've already heard a summary of the proposed rule and are aware of why staff feels this is a necessity for the enforcement of motor carrier safety rules in Kansas. Staff seeks adoption of the permanent version of KR 8241 by roll call vote. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but otherwise I turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Hassan. Before we conduct the roll call vote, let's just pause a second to see if there are any questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Keither, any questions?
No questions.
I have no questions, so we will just move to the roll call vote. As I mentioned, Commissioner Keene is absent today, so we will mark him absent on the roll call vote. But now for the other two of us, I'll call myself first. Chair French votes yes on adoption of the regulations. Commissioner Keither, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
All right.
And
So we will record the yes votes and the regulations are adopted. So Hassan, you've got everything you need, I believe, and we will get you that certificate to send off. So anything further you need on your end?
No, not for me, but I appreciate all your help with this. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. This ends the public hearing and the roll call vote on adoption of regulations. We are back to our regular business meeting agenda, but we are at the conclusion of everything noticed on the business meeting agenda. So with that, if there's nothing further to come before us this morning, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
And I'll second that motion. All in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.